everyone. Today we're going to make this beautiful collage. I've called it a vase full of happiness, and it looks complicated, but it actually isn't that complicated to make. We will be starting with making some beautiful painted papers. In your pack you will find a range of paints, and we're going to use these paints along with the other bits and pieces in your pack, including this cardboard, corrugated card. We've got some bubble wrap which I've already used here, but we're going to reuse it. Sponge, you'll have some cotton buds, a paintbrush. Hopefully you'll have your own water vessel. I just use an ice cream container and something to mix your paints up in, so I just use this. But you can use any plastic lid or an old plate, works just as well. Also in your pack you'll find a numbered pattern like this, and we're going to follow along using that. You've got the bits that you can cut out so that you can get the shapes right. I'm going to begin by making the coloured papers, and once I've done those I'll show you them and I will show you how I made them. Here I'm mixing some colours to make the background. So the background in this has got a lot of white in it. So this colour here is made with white, grass green and some lemon yellow. This colour up here is predominantly more of the blue green, a little bit of the turquoise again with the white. This is again a lighter grassy sort of green. There's just variations of all of these tones. This is a bit of blue and white mixed together there. So you can choose which colours you would like, but you do need some light colours, perhaps warmer colours on the right hand side, going into the cooler colours up here in the top left hand corner, and that just gives a nice variation of tone for your artwork. This is the end result of my playing with the equipment that's in the pack and using yellow green, grass green, white, blue green and a little bit of turquoise. I've used some blue up here as well, so that's just blue and white mixed together. Start with your white and add your darker colours to the white rather than the other way round. That way you'll have more control over the depth of colour that you want to create. The aim is to use the equipment in your pack, from the bubble wrap, the corrugated card, bits of cardboard which you can scratch across. That's what I've used here. You can use handy towel which you scrunch up and you make a nice texture like this. We want maybe 4 or 5 different colours and maybe 3 different depths of colour. So we want some dark, some very light like we've got here, and some of medium tone. That will give interest to your finished artwork. If you cut your sponge so that you have a bigger piece and a smaller piece, like so, we can now use the end of this to create a really nice pattern for our tablecloth, and we can use this piece to create the yellow flowers, but I'll show you that soon. Okay, I'm now onto the tablecloth. I've mixed up some colours on my painting lid. I've got blue green. Here is a mixture of the 2 colours together plus a little bit of turquoise and a touch of white. And here I've got some lighter colours made with white and turquoise, and up here we've got some more grass green added to that one. The design is just a checkerboard sort of effect, so just stamp on the design with your sponge that you cut like so. Doesn't have to be even, it's just to create a nice pattern. I'll do 3 lines, and then in between each line I'm going to put the blue green. So just flick your sponge over the other side and away you go. And if they overlap it can create a really nice effect. The second texture is again using a mixture of the blue and the blue green, a little bit of turquoise and white, and I'm just going to sponge that over. Don't be too fussy with what it looks like because it's going to be cut up and mixed in with the checkerboard effect. To make it slightly more interesting, I'm going to take my little bit of paper towel and I'm going to dab that into a slightly different colour, which is that lighter green that I made, and I'm just going to stipple it on top like this. If I don't use it for the tablecloth, I'm not worried because I might use it for the vase. Okay, and for the vase itself, I'm going to make a nice mix with those lighter colours, and I'm just going to sponge them on like this. You can do any sort of texture you want, as long as it's interesting and not all the same. So this is just swirling it on. Some of the white on top using the paper. I don't want it all the same, so I'll just do a line of it and I can rip that up later. Quite happy with the end result. That there is enough to be going on with to make the tablecloth. This is the paper that we're going to use to make any greenery that's in the artwork, as well as the lilies. This is the piece of sponge that I cut off, and I've just dipped it in some yellow ochre. I've mixed up a few different colours here on my tray. This is the red oxide, but I only want a touch of that yellow ochre, and I've dipped it in and I've just stamped it on accordingly in a fairly random fashion. I've added a little bit of lemon yellow to that and a touch of this mix of yellow ochre and red oxide, just a little tiny bit, just to give it a little bit more interest. And then on top of that, I'm going to get my cotton bud, dip it in the white, and I'm just going to put a few little smears of white on there just to add some interest. Now I only want 2 of these flowers, but I'll make 3 in case I don't like one. And later when I cut it, I'm going to just take the pattern piece. So I've just cut that from the series of patterns that are in your kit, and I'll just lay that on top of one of these painted flowers, and I'll cut around it to get that nice lily that we've got here. Okay, so that's how those are made. For the rest of the paper, I'm just going to make all sorts of different greens that I can use for leaves. So just use your paintbrush fairly randomly, and then you'll cut round the leaf shape, and you'll end up with a whole variety of different shades of green and interesting textures. Don't be fussy, just have a little bit of fun and experimentation with cardboard as well. So you can take a piece of cardboard like this and you can just place the paint onto the cardboard and just work it over the top of your paper until you get a mixture of dark and light greens that you can use. Okay, so I'll show you the finished result in a moment. Right, there is the finished artwork, and as you can see, I've filled in a lot of the white spaces with more green, just so I've got some variations of the textures and the colours of green to make the leaves. We are now going to start on the most exciting part, which is making the flowers, and I just love doing this, and I'm hoping you're going to love it too. We're going to make all those beautiful blooms, and to start with, you just want to trace off paper that's got your patterns on it, put it against a window with a white piece of the cartridge on top, and just trace around so you get the approximate circles that you need. You can go outside these areas, but you want them approximately this size. On your pattern, you've got colours like number 4, for instance, there's pink inside and red outside. So you want to mix up some colours. We want a lot of orange, we want quite a lot of red, this is the red oxide, we want a bit of the lemon yellow and a little bit of white, so we can get variations in the oranges and the red. So to begin with, I'm going to start with the orange, and I'm just going to dip my finger in like so, and if you want to wear a glove to do this, then by all means go for it. And all I want to do is get lots of paint on there and go around and make a beautiful sort of spirally sort of shape. Okay, so it's super easy, just like this. Then take your finger again, put it into the red, and do the same sort of thing with the red. Okay, so just keep working until you have all of the circles filled in different variations of the red and the orange paint. To make those lighter colours, I'm just going to randomly mix up the colour like this. I'm not even going to use a brush. And when I've got a slightly lighter colour, I'm going to put it on top of the orange one. So everything's in swirls. It's like a peony, which goes round and round. Like when you look at it, there's a lot of layers. A rose is very much the same. There's lots and lots of layers. So just work on top like so until you get a nice effect. If you think you're just making a bit of a hash of it, just stop and start a new one, and then come back when it's dry, and then you can work on top of it. This is the finished artwork that I will use for my flowers. I've added some touches of darker colour to each flower by mixing a tiny little bit of black in with the red, and I'll just create a slightly darker edge on a few areas. I've also dipped the cotton bud into white, and I've done the same thing. So I've just added the odd splash of white here and there. And finally, I've used some dark brown, and I've just applied a little bit to the center of each flower just to create some depth there. So you've got variation in tone, you've got different types of oranges and reds, and all in all, you've got a range of flowers that you can use to make your beautiful collage. I'm about to start ripping up these two beautiful pieces of paper and apply them to my canvas using my pattern as a guide. So the top 2/3 of the canvas is going to be covered in these two papers here. So I'll do that and then I'll show you the end result. Okay, now you can see the background has been put on. I've used a lot of random shapes. I've just ripped up my papers and I've chosen some of the lighter greens or the warmer greens, yellow greens for this side, and over on this side I've used more of the bluey greens. I've left the center bare because the flowers are going to sit on top of there. To make the tablecloth, just look at your pattern. You can see you've got a lot of lines here. I'm going to use this paper here to make the tablecloth, and to start with I'm just going to measure approximately how much I need to cut. So I am going to be using around about, say, 10 centimeters. So if you look at your work and measure off about 10 centimeters, and then you can rip this by hand or you can use a ruler. I find a ruler is quite an easy way to do it. So there we go. There's 10 centimeters, and I'll do the same with the other piece. So I'll just rip that off there. And now I'm going to cut these bits into strips, and I just want to taper them a little bit. So I've got some variations in the shapes so I can create this sort of perspective look. So you can see I just angle my ruler accordingly, and then I do the same with this lot. So I just cut some of these up, and then when I think I've got enough, I'm going to position them, and let's see what they look like actually on the work itself. So there's the work, and we want to put these on like this, and then you get another piece that looks like this, and so forth, and just alternate them and glue them down when you're happy with the overall look. And now you can see the tablecloth's in place. I'll trim all these edges off later. The next thing I do is I cut a piece of lighter green. Using a ruler is the best way to do it actually, so you get a tidier edge. And I'm just going to glue that on top of all these sort of random pieces here so that I end up with a straighter line of the green. Now you can see the finished vase. It's got the darker colour up the top, and then this lighter paper that I made using the cotton bud tipped in white paint, and then a lighter colour at the bottom. It doesn't matter if yours doesn't look exactly like this. As long as there's a little bit of contrast between this and the background, you'll be fine. Next we're going to do the stems. Just use the green paper to do this. You're going to use your scissors, and you want to cut them fairly straight. You need about 6 or 7 stems for down here, okay? And you want some of these leaves here cut out. So these are tapered at the end. Make a whole bunch of random ones, and then you can choose the ones that look best. We'll also cut out the leaves here using the leaf shapes that we made on here. And lastly, we will do the lilies, and you just take your pattern piece, lay it on top of the lily, and then cut around until you get a nice shape that you think you might like. There's 3 lilies there. You only need 2 for the artwork, so just choose the 2 best ones. Okay, there it is now. I've cut out enough stems for down here. I think there's 6, and I've cut out a range of different leaves for here and here. Pattern pieces number 16 and 13 I've also cut out from that green, so there's one there and there's one there, and up the top you can see you've got some leaves as well. The lilies have been positioned in place, so those are those 2 ones, and I've made some stems just using the green. You'll find when you actually put this together that you're actually not going to see the stems really. See a little bit of this one, but just in case yours don't sit exactly where you want them, it's quite a good idea to have them in place. And last but not least, the most exciting part is putting on the flowers. So just cut out your patterns. I've cut them a little bit bigger because it doesn't really matter. And then just lay them on the flower that best suits the description. So if it says orange, obviously you put it on an orange one and red goes on a red one. And you're going to cut those out and we'll position those and stick them on. Right, this is the finished artwork. A Vase Full of Happiness is exactly what it is. I hope you've had a wonderful time making this collage, and I hope that you won't worry if yours isn't exactly the same as mine. I found that I ended up cutting a few of the shapes slightly differently to the first time that I made it, and it hasn't made an iota of difference. The important thing is just to enjoy all the colour, enjoy the textures, and not to be afraid to create art, because that's what these kits are all about. It's empowering you to have some fun without worrying about composition, without worrying about getting everything exactly right. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you again. Bye.